Hi, I'm Mark with Watch Society. In the past 10 years, there has been a plethora of new watch brands that have come out. It's almost like we're in a new renaissance of watches. New brands are popping up all the time, and the biggest problem is most of them are meh. The design languages are a copy of something else. They don't bring anything new to the table. There's very few in this large group that are coming out that really differentiate themselves as being something that's worth really spending some time with. But there's certainly one large standout from that group, and that is Horologer Ming. So let's get into it. Now, Horologer Ming, or as it's more commonly referred to as Ming, has been around since 2017, and there's been a few early watches before that were kind of just playing around with an idea, but really the company started in earnest in 2017. And in those 7 short years, it's been nominated for multiple GPHG awards. It's won 2, including one this past year, and all while not pushing the boundaries of mechanical or engineering side of watches, but of design side. And that's what really makes a watch brand stand out. Think of something like Cartier. The only reason we know about them as watch brand is because of their design language. They're not creating the new minute repeaters or perpetual calendars or pushing the boundaries there. No, they created the Tank and the Santos and the Crash and the Pebble, all of these rare, well-designed watches that nobody else did. If you can do that, if you can create a design that really stands out, then you have something. And that's exactly what Ming has done. Now in front of us today, we have the Ming Minimalist, the 37.02. It's part of their 3rd generation of watches, and each generation they've gotten a little bit more refined, a little bit better, and this is really the standard bearer of the line right now. It takes away everything you don't need and just shows you the design language that is Ming. When you first look at any Ming, what stands out probably is the lugs. Lugs are that forgotten about thing that most brands just stick on the end and say, whoop, we're good. But Ming actually took time to design something new that flares out to these sharp points that go a little bit further from the case, that really give it a flowing feel, that it's not just contained in this little spot, but flows out to be part of the wrist. It's a beautiful look, and it's a look that's recognizable across a room. Something that you really want if you're starting a new watch brand, because you don't want to just look like a Rolex or something like that, just a copy of yet another watch. You want your own design language into it. Moving into the watch, you see a thin bezel that really allows the dial to take over the watch. It's a 38 millimeter watch, but because of those extended out lugs, the thin bezel, the big dial that takes up most of the watch, it actually wears a little bit bigger. Even on my 8-inch wrist, the 38 millimeter does not feel small. Yeah, it probably would fit better on people 7.5 inch or less, which is most of the population, but 38 still works on somebody that has my large wrist, and I'm not a big fan of 38 millimeters usually because of that. Now, the dial itself. In this watch, you see the Ming logo, and that's always there. It's a beautiful logo that flows into the circular nature of a watch. It flows into either numerals on past watches, or in this case, just the lines. And this is called the Minimalist because it's just 2 hands, simple lines around it, in a beautiful design, because the lines, though they are somewhat asymmetric, you notice that every time the lines kind of intersect each other is actually an hour point. If you spend a minute with this watch, it becomes almost second nature to read the time. You quickly see how those lines intersect. Oh, that's 1, that's 2 o'clock, that's 3 o'clock. And even though it doesn't have traditional markers, even though it's just a series of lines that don't have traditional, just little breaks in them, you can see where the lines overlap right at those hour markers. You're able to actually understand that this is a new way to show time on a watch while not being new. It's a design language that no one's done. Asymmetrical, easy to read, yet simplistic, minimalist design. It's really beautiful in an architectural or sculptural way. When normally it's just an afterthought to have markers on a watch, this one doesn't, yet it works. It's the beauty of simplicity here. That's what Ming has done. They haven't overdone any watch. They haven't just thrown as much as they can at it. In fact, they don't do a whole lot of high complications. They've done chronographs before and they're beautiful. Even the chronographs aren't the typical 3-dial registers. They very much clean everything up to be about the architectural beauty of the watch, whether it's the case or the simplicity of the dial or their own hands that they use. Everything about it is meant to be beautiful while not being overwhelming. And that's why I say the Minimalist is the standard bearer right now, but it's really almost the obvious conclusion of where they've gone in their time. They've gone from watch to watch to watch, cleaning it up, simplifying it, creating something that just is beautiful. It works. Now, of course, any watch at this price range has sapphire as the crystal on top, but also the dial here is covered in sapphire. And that black sapphire look is at one time also very inky black and absorbs everything you see, but if it hits the light just right, it's very reflective and bright on your wrist. It's an interesting effect, and it's really cool on the wrist, but it is a pain to photograph and film. So as you see all the B-roll here, you'll notice my camera and my face probably reflected back because there are times where it was just impossible because of the reflective nature of it. But at the same time, it is beautiful. Now in the sapphire, there's laser cut etching that is where the super luminova here goes in. And you'll see that it's a white lume. Now, it's typical to see a white lume or white super luminova when it's not luminescing, when it's just in bright light. But this is probably the first time you've ever seen white luminova glow white, because usually luminova is a ceramic powder that absorbs light throughout the day and absorbs energy and releases it later when there's no longer light coming in. That works great, but naturally it glows a little green. And when you want a different color to it, you can dope it with a different type of element that releases a different wavelength of electron. And that gives you a different color. But to create white, you now have to create all the colors. You have to create the full visual spectrum to have a white lume. And nobody's done that because it's a pain. And Ming's been wanting to do it for a while, and they've been trying to find places that can do it. And eventually they did it in-house. They actually created their own lume color in-house. It's very eerie because when the light goes out, it looks like the white markers are just still there. You don't realize it's glowing at first until you see the hands, which have the typical green glow glowing. It lets you know that the lume is working and you can see it, but you forget that you can see it because it's glowing, because it's just the exact same color. It's a little eerie. It's really cool effect and very hard to get on camera because your camera keeps wanting the blue shifted away. It's really not used to that white light in the lume. It's kind of, especially a phone camera does not like that. So it takes a little color correction to get it right. Now going into the technical details of the Ming Minimalist. It's the first watch they've created in their new Chaux de Fonds factory, which means that in the few short years that Ming has been around, in 7 years, they've gone from using other people to help manufacture and put together the watch like any new watch brand does, to having their own factory in Switzerland, creating their own watch in Switzerland, using their own super luminova in Switzerland, and really perfecting their entire design language. You'll probably see movements from them at some point, but for right now, if you flip the watch over, you'll see a Sellita SW300 for Ming. Now, when you usually say for a brand or something like that on a Sellita movement, it means they changed the rotor out, put their name on the rotor, and called it a day. Which is fine for a new brand, because you shouldn't be expected to have your own in-house movement or go far to customizing things too much in movement. It's a very expensive part of the watch. And if you're a new brand, there's no way you're going to be able to do that, especially at a price point of this watch, which is around $3,500. When you flip this over, you suddenly realize that's not what Ming did. Ming didn't just take a Sellita movement, throw a new rotor on it, slam it in the case and go, we're done. They skeletonized the entire movement so you can see everything that's going on inside. They black DLC coded it to give kind of a balance visually between the front and the back, where you have this dark front, dark back, dark rubber. Everything works in balance, even the movement. That says how far Ming's gone. It's not just the typical micro brand that's just like, cool, we made a design. It kind of looks like a Rolex. Let's take a Salida movement, slap it in there, sell it, we're good. Every little detail is considered. They didn't forget about the lugs. They didn't forget about the dial doing it differently. They didn't forget about the design language that's consistent throughout their line. They didn't forget about the movement looking like it belongs in the watch. Like they developed it, even though they didn't, and they're very honest about that. But what they've done to it is completely different. And it's those little details. Even the rubber strap, when they make it curved. So it's not the stiff rubber. When you put it on your wrist, it naturally is ready to curve to you. All of those details, all the things that go into it is the reason why, even on a watch that's called the Minimalist, is why Ming is miles ahead of every other micro brand that's come out in the past 10 years. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And in the comments, is there another micro brand you think's doing it better than Ming or also doing it well? Or what's your favorite Ming? Let us know. Have a good one.